And it is through the benefit of a discussion with you where we are going to listen more than we talk, that we will get feedback and perspective on how the work that we are doing is helping our small business leaders, our entrepreneurs to grow. We fully understand that when our entrepreneurs and our small business leaders are strong, America is strong. Because what you do is the work that is, yes, about innovation. It is the work that is spurred by creativity. It is the work we always want to encourage that is about aspiration and ambition. And it is the work that really is the undergird of the economy of the United States of America. Small businesses and small business owners then represent half of America's workforce. Half of America's private workforce works for or runs a small business. And when I think about our small business leaders and each of you, I know who you are. You are not only leaders in business, leaders in innovation, entrepreneurs, but you are also civic leaders. You are community leaders. You are role models. You hire locally, you mentor, and you inspire. So when we think about the work that we must do, for me as Vice President of the United States, for us as an administration, it is about continuously focusing on what we can do to strengthen our nation. And that means strengthening and supporting the work that each of you has accomplished that brings us to this conversation today and the work yet to be done moving forward. At this table, we have entrepreneurs, small business owners who are working in the area of space, technology, addressing the climate crisis and understanding the opportunities that exist there in terms of growing a clean energy economy and growing a workforce that has the skills and the ability to lead where we can be unburdened by where we have been. The leaders at this table have shown grit and creativity in terms of pulling together their resources to grow an idea into something that actually benefits communities and all of society. And the work that then we are going to do coming out of this meeting is to continue to then grow our administration's focus on what we can do to support you. For example, when I was a United States Senator, I worked with some of the senators who were there at the time, and we got an additional $12 billion to go into our community banks, community lenders, CDFIs. Understanding that financial institutions that are rooted in and run by folks who understand the community are best situated to understand the capacity of the community, the needs of the community, the mores of the community, and then to understand how to appropriately invest in the potential and the growth of a community. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, which is what can we do to strengthen the work that we have been doing with community banks in a way that it assists you to continue to grow. We're going to talk about the realities for any small business, including in particular small businesses owned by people of color, Black people, Latinos, Asians, others, in terms of some of the challenges that exist for anyone, but are of a particular concern for our small business owners who are people of color, which is access to capital, access to markets, access to consumers, access. And what can we do to facilitate and better improve access so that you can then be out there to compete? Because if your product's good, you will be able to do that, but access to resources shouldn't be the obstacle between you being able to have what is necessary to compete in a fair way or not. To that extent, yes, we do talk about equity. We actually believe it is a good principle, in spite what some so-called leaders might try to suggest. We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. So it sounds like it might be right, everyone gets an equal share and then they should compete and the best thing will win. But that assumes everyone starts out on the same base. Equity takes into account that may not be the case, but we want to give everyone an equal opportunity to compete and to not only survive, but thrive. So these are some of the guiding principles behind us coming together today. But most importantly, we are here today to recognize your excellence and to hold that up as models of who we are as a nation and what we can do to continue to grow not only our economy, but our capacity and strength as it relates to so many issues. So again, I thank the leaders for taking the time out of your busy schedules, for so many of you for traveling, to make the journey to be here for this important discussion. And I now will turn it over to Deputy Secretary Graves from the Department of Commerce to help moderate our discussion. I also want to thank Undersecretary Cravens for your excellent work and for the conversations that we will have about how we support our young men of color who are the entrepreneurs and business leaders in our country. With that.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Vice President Harris, for having us here for what I think is one of the most important conversations that we can have today for this country's economic success. Seeing all of the business owners, I am reminded of my own family's story. It's something that may resonate with many of you. I know firsthand that America's road to prosperity runs through our minority business community. My 4 times great-grandparents, so great-great-great-great-grandparents, former slaves, operated a successful horse and buggy taxi business on the very land where the Department of Commerce now sits, the department that I helped to manage. Their son ended up owning the premier hotel in Washington, D.C. at that time, and he became one of the first of this country's black patent holders. His wife operated a candy shop next door to their business. And Madam Vice President, I know you know the other parts of the story, but you may not know this part. Their son was the very first graduate of Howard University.
You know.
But their success story is an important reminder that in spite of what may seem like insurmountable odds when everything is stacked against you, minority-owned businesses are and always will be a part of this nation's economic success. Like many of you, I've started and run my own business, and I've also had my business, also like too many entrepreneurs of color, had my business fail as a result of lack of capital. That is all too common for entrepreneurs of color. And under the Biden-Harris administration, we're working to change that, thanks to the Vice President and the President's leadership. For instance, the Commerce Department has been committed to unlocking the economic opportunities for communities of color all across the country, not because it's some socially nice thing to do, but because it's important for the long-term economic success. Equity drives prosperity, not just for some of the country, but for the entire country as a whole. Providing aspiring entrepreneurs of color access to opportunity, to resources, to information, to entrepreneurial ecosystems, we're creating opportunities for women and men across the country that unleashes the potential for innovation, and we know will lead to growth that benefits all of us. So the Biden-Harris administration has done a number of things. We aren't going to go into all of that today. We can talk about that later. But I do want to call out one thing. It's given the Minority Business Development Agency, the only agency in the federal government created specifically to foster the establishment and the growth of minority-owned businesses in this country. It's given MBDA a permanent seat in the federal government, the first time in our history, empowering the agency to double in size and make historic investments that we know will expand the reach of the agency to communities that have not had that type of exposure and that support. Just last year, and I'm sure that Undersecretary Cravens will talk about this, MBDA launched $93 million capital readiness program grant competition, which is the largest of its kind in MBDA's history, to help minority and other underserved entrepreneurs to grow, to scale their businesses. We know there's a long way to go, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's important for us as an administration, and I know the Vice President knows this because she talks about it all the time, not to speak to you, but to listen to you, to meet you where you are, to understand the challenges that you're facing, to make certain that you have the resources that you need so that you can succeed, so that you don't fail simply because you don't have the support that you need at that particular time. So that's why this conversation is so critical right now, not just for these business owners, but for so many across this country and for our long-term economic success. Madam Vice President, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to the discussion. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my dear friend and someone who has been a leader, who's been a small business person himself, former elected official, a current reservist. Thank you for your service to the country in many ways. And the very first Undersecretary for Minority Business Development, Don Cravens.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the other Don at the Department of Commerce, and ma'am, I'm so proud to serve under his leadership. I have no problem being the other Don. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Secretary. Madam Vice President, thank you so much for hosting us today, and good afternoon, brothers. It is so good to see all of you. As the Deputy Secretary said, I'm Don Cravens, and I'm honored to serve as our nation's first Undersecretary of Minority Business Development at the U.S. Department of Commerce. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I've had an opportunity to visit with many of you today and in the past. You are the driving engines that are driving our economy, that are driving our nation. For those of you who are not aware of the Minority Business Development Agency, we've actually been a temporary agency for 52 years or so. We were created in 1969 when brothers like Dr. King and Whitney Young were saying we want economic rights as much as we need social and civic rights. And so President Nixon created the agency, but we remained a temporary agency until this leader and President Biden in 2021 signed into law for the first time the Minority Business Development Act. And for the first time, it created a permanent agency whose sole purpose is the growth and global competitiveness of minority business enterprises in this country. And so, brothers and sisters, for the first time in our nation's history, as the Deputy Secretary said, we have a permanent seat at the table, at all of the tables. We're no longer in the folding chair, in the kiddie table, at the kiddie table on the side. We are here, and we're here with a permanent seat. The Minority Business Development Agency's mission is twofold. I talked about the first, that we have a national network of 88 business centers and grant programs that provide technical assistance and business support services to minority business enterprises. Second, we operate on a systemic level where we help our federal government partners in breaking down the barriers that have plagued so many of us in this room and our fathers and our mothers before us. We understand we have to remove those barriers in order to expand access to opportunities for businesses like yours. The last thing I want to tell you about, and the Deputy Secretary mentioned it, is a historic initiative that we just launched at the MBDA. It's actually the largest program of its type in the U.S. the Department of Commerce's history. It's called the Capital Readiness Program. And brothers, I need you to pay attention to this one. It's a $100 million program. It's the largest technical assistance grant program that we've ever launched. And through this program, we are going to add 40 or so additional incubators and accelerators to help you all scale your businesses, make your businesses more capital ready, and to ensure that you get to participate in all of the wonderful investment that we are making in our country through the infrastructure bills and all of the great things that are coming out. This is what it looks like when you lead with intention, brothers. And that is what this is all about. The first and the last step to accomplishing our mission is with conversations like the one we are having today. And the Vice President talked about, this is not the ending, this is the beginning. Conversations with men and women of color, like you all, who believe in the American dream, and more importantly, who believe in themselves. MBDA is your agency. MBDA is your agency. Use us, hold us accountable, I'm here to listen. The Vice President is here to listen. I know the Deputy Secretary is here to listen as well. And we will act and continue acting on your behalf. For decades, like an episode of Good Times, you young people don't even know what that is.
They don't know what that is.
We've been hearing, Madam Vice President, that help is on the way, help is on the way. And for too long and too often, help never comes, or it comes just too late. Brothers, our commitment to serve with intention and with equity, as the Vice President said, it is real. That's why I'm proud to say that help is no longer just on the way. Help is here, and it's here to stay. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So you will now moderate our conversation?
Absolutely. Well, Madam Vice President, we're going to ask a few people to give some brief remarks about the types of issues that they're facing, the challenges that they're dealing with. So maybe I can turn to Deschanel. DJ Catlin, please.
Don't mind. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Dejanel Catlin. I'm a former NASA engineer who recently resigned to co-found an impact-driven organization called the Equity Space Alliance, in which I currently serve as the Chief Operations Officer. At the Equity Space Alliance, we are working to create a more equitable humanity by leveraging the great opportunities provided by the Artemis program and the growing commercial space industry. We are working to position and prepare the next generation of space entrepreneurs, researchers, and businesses from underserved communities, creating commercial space company founders from historically underserved communities. Our mission is to advocate, educate, and facilitate equitable ownership within the space industry, resulting in an economy that better reflects America and humanity and that is equipped for the future. Prosperity Now and the Institute for Policy Studies projects that the average Black family's household median wealth will reach 0 by 2053, and Latinx wealth, 0 by 2073. This is a social disaster that indicates the end of the American dream for many of us. There is a critical need for economic stability in historically excluded communities. The space economy, projected to surpass $1 trillion by 2030, can be the launchpad that changes the trajectory in these economic distressed communities. So my co-founder, Janaea Griffin, and I, two recent graduates of the Thunderbird School of Global Management, Space Leadership, Business, and Policy program, have created this Equity Space Alliance to do exactly that. What does a successful mission look like for us? It starts with support. Support that we're leveraging from educational institutions, corporations, and the Biden-Harris administration. The administration's National Space Council, chaired by Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, has started a path of intentionality to equity by integrating socially impactful policies into the United States Space Priorities Framework. Additionally, efforts to increase funding like the Economic Opportunity Coalition will help to provide capital for small minority-owned businesses that will augment the minuscule financing currently being received by Black and brown entrepreneurs annually. It is our hope that through the continued support from the administration, we can put systems in place to increase supplier diversity and assist minority-owned businesses like our client, Patterson Aerospace Systems, a company working to produce sustainable space technologies. Helping companies like them overcome hurdles like past performance requirements allows the production of a better future for all of humanity through their work in space domain awareness and agriculture technology. Today, the Biden-Harris administration is once again displaying their commitment to forging a more equitable future by inviting business leaders like myself to discuss additional solutions that will help Black and brown entrepreneurs across America succeed. These solutions will propel us into a new economic trajectory that sees all of us in the stars. So on behalf of the Equity Space Alliance and minority-owned space companies nationwide, thank you to the Biden-Harris administration for the invitation, and we're looking forward to forging this new future together.
So, Mr. Catlin, first of all, I want to thank how smooth you had Launchpad in there, and then the stars in there. That was very smooth. But you are right. I head the National Space Council. I'm very excited about what we're doing, and over the last few years in particular, as we have all noticed, the private sector's role in space exploration has grown exponentially. And obviously that means a growth in the opportunities in that industry. And we need to then fuel, how do you like that?
Yeah, I love it.
Right, the pipeline around who's in that field. And everyone here may know, but interestingly enough, as many as 75% of the manufacturing companies in the United States are small businesses. The number I saw most recently is 75% of manufacturers in the United States have 20 or fewer employees. So think about what that means in terms of space exploration, in terms of the manufacturing piece of it, and subcontracting. Not to mention, I know there are many leaders here who are focused on the clean energy economy and what that means for solar, for wind turbines, and all of the manufacturing electric vehicles that needs to happen. And so what we want to do is ensure that in these new industries, that we are applying equitable principles to ensure that everyone has equal opportunity to thrive. So I appreciate you raising the points that you've raised. I think they're incredibly important, and certainly what we hope to come out of this meeting is also to open up people's minds who are thinking about, I want to be a small business owner because I respect the small business owners, and give them ideas about what they could actually do, right? So that's very exciting. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Madam Vice President, we'll turn to Chandler Malone from Boot Up next.
There you go.
Okay, cool, great, awesome. My name is Chandler Malone. I'm the founder of a company called Boot Up. We help people get their first jobs in tech regardless of their academic or professional background. Since launching the company in December of 2020, we've helped over 2,500 people get their first jobs in tech for over $200 million in annualized salaries. 78% of those people are Black and brown. And the way that we do that is we work with enterprises like JP Morgan, Best Buy, Home Depot, just to name a few, to co-create curriculum with their teams so that they can upskill and reskill their retail workers for those tech roles. I also launched a venture studio called The Family, where we've invested in 10 Black and brown founders. The estimated market cap of those 10 Black and brown founders companies is at over $300 million. And really the goal there, it isn't just to amass wealth, by investing in these companies. Obviously that is, a byproduct. But the goal there is to be able to get these companies in a space where they aren't just raising angel capital, but they're raising institutional capital for their companies. Because right now we know that Black and brown founders raise less than 2% of the venture capital that's out there. And, over the past 6 months, it's been less than 1%. And so, really, really appreciative of the opportunity to be here. Really excited about what the future looks like, just as more new technologies permeate our society. There's going to be a huge opportunity for us to be able to play a bit of catch up by getting into these spaces, by getting into these industries, but it's incredibly imperative that we get into them now so that we don't get left behind even further.
That's right.
So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I appreciate the way that your business model, how you're thinking about it, because in a lot of these new industries, to your point, a college degree is not necessary to do the job. A high level of skills is necessary. And we also need to rethink how we have kind of given status, right, to a college degree versus not having a college degree, as opposed to also thinking about, well, what's the skill that's required, and give status to that, right? I will tell you as a personal kind of peeve, I don't like the term unskilled labor, because all work requires a skill, right? But on, in particular, the point that you're addressing around technology and by extension space and climate, so many of these jobs really, if we started to also think about how industry, and that includes all of the leaders here, describe the job, as opposed to a fancy title or a degree, the skill that is necessary. So to your point around workforce development, we're then also sending signals to the educators, to the trainers, to the apprenticeship programs about what they should be training for, because these are the jobs that need to be filled. So you really are in front of where I think all of this has to go. I've been convening CEOs in our country and abroad. In Japan, for example, I've convened Korean CEOs and talking about just this point. Let's define the job based on the skill that's required, and then fill that up. So congratulations to you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Chandler, just so you're aware, thanks to the Vice President and the President's leadership, from our department alone, there's about $55 billion being invested right now in things like semiconductors, in tech hubs. So we need as many folks as you can help put into the pipeline. So thank you. Let's turn to Brandon Blackwood next. Thank you.
Hey guys. So just starting off, I get really nervous. So if I'm a little shaky, just like bear with that.
We need to hear what you have to say. Don't you worry about it.
So my name is Brandon Blackwood. I am owner, founder, designer, CEO of my brand Blackwood, New York. We started from my mom's basically kitchen to now. We have our own showroom. We're doing pretty well, I think. With us, I really, the brand really like kind of lives on social media. That's kind of where we blew up, and that's where we like really got a lot of our support from. And just now today, what happens, and I kind of always like, I always hit like a crossroads, is I see a lot of other like younger kids trying to like do the same thing, start a business of their own. And I'm always hit with the fact that I don't really know where to direct them or where to help them or like where to, kind of tell them. There's programs like the CFDA, there's other smaller things, but on a larger level, most of them are just based in New York. I would love to see something where it's a little bit more national, where whether you want to be a designer, you want to work in tech, you want to work in space, I don't know how, but you know what I mean? Just like, if you don't want to make handbags and accessories like me, I still want a younger, someone with entrepreneurial like spirit to be able to have that access. The majority of my customers are Black and POC. The only reason I'm here today is because I've had that support. I've had that kind of like, community around me. Kind of moreover, I'm sorry, I'm just saying all my issues, but kind of moreover, I see now, my brand is building. Last year, we grossed like 30 million, which was like a big deal for us. But that was gross. At the end of it, it was not so cute. And for me, it was like, I'm working so hard. My team is only getting bigger. We have so much to do. And I feel like all my resources are not necessarily going back into my brand. And I think everyone in here, we all kind of look the same. We're not given the same kind of like starting place. And once we get to a level of success, I don't have like a sob story, but once we get to a certain level of success, I'm like, okay, now here I hit a ceiling. Where do I go from there? My competition, I truly feel they're only beating me because I don't have the knowledge and I don't have the access. I don't know all the tricks and the tools to get to that next level. I want to be the next coach. I want to be the next whatever brand, but I can't necessarily get there because I don't know where else to go. And that sucks to say it out loud and to know that there's so many other people that look up to my brand and like a lot of the people in this room. So yeah, I just want to know, like, ultimately, I hope I hear something from this, but basically, how do I pass that ceiling? How do we all, in our respectful like businesses, break that ceiling, continue? We're all here successful and like we're here for a reason, but how do we really compete with our competition? So yeah.
So you hit on such a critical point in terms of also a subtext for this conversation, which is about equity and recognizing the particular challenges of businesses run by people of color on the access to capital piece. Because what you have hit on is a huge issue, which is you might be able to get the $20,000 loan, but what about the $5 million loan? You may have a small business that has 5 people, but it's also a small business to have 100 employees. Small businesses to grow, it's not only about having your product on your shelf and paying the bills every month, but it's about, can you actually grow? And so that's a part of our focus. And I'm so glad you raised that, because that is intentionally why we've asked the business leaders who are here to be here, because so many of you are in that zone where you may have got some startup capital because you may have a relative, or you just had some savings or some money, but to get to the next plateau, that's almost a bigger hurdle than that first plateau. And so that is part of why we have asked you to be here, is to talk about how we can start to uplift that point and address it, both in terms of, like you said, also individual as well as institutional. I think you were mentioning that too, how we are thinking about that in terms of capital and access to that, so that you can truly compete on every level. Because what I said at the beginning remains very true for us in terms of how we're thinking about this. This is not just about you surviving. It's about your ability to thrive and grow and compete at every level that you are prepared to. So thank you for that point. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. This podium is very high. Okay, it's great to see you guys on the other side of the world. As you can see to my left, we have National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan here, who's going to just give a little bit of a kind of a update on what we've seen the last couple of days here with the G7 in Japan. And I'm just going to let him kick it off. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Corinne, and good to see everybody this morning. Thank you all for joining us. On the flight over here to Hiroshima from DC, I said that this summit would be a high watermark for the G7 and that it would demonstrate real unity among the key democracies of the world on a range of critical issues. And I think over the course of today, and particularly with the release of the joint statement of the leaders, you will see that in spades across the board, whether we're talking about our support for Ukraine and holding Russia accountable, our approach to PRC, our focus on economic security, our commitment to the clean energy transition, on a range of significant issues. You will see close alignment among the key countries of the G7 and a common approach to tackling the significant challenges of our day. On Ukraine, we have now announced some 300 sanctions against individuals, entities, vessels, and aircraft. We are particularly focused on circumvention and evasion targets. We are focused on financial facilitators, and we have also made sure to continue to crack down on future energy and extractive capabilities, as well as other steps in the sanctions space to tighten the screws from the point of view of economic pressure against critical elements of the Russian defense industrial base and its ability to advance its economic and energy goals. We are expanding our sanctions authorities to additional sectors of the Russian economy that are key to its military industrial complex. We're imposing new bans to prevent Russia from benefiting from our services. And our actions are more tightly coordinated with the ones imposed by the EU and the UK to ensure that what they are doing, we are doing, what we are doing, they are doing, and that we have the kind of full alignment that has been a hallmark of our approach to economic pressure since the start of this conflict. Just yesterday, as you all know, President Biden informed his G7 counterparts that the United States will support a joint effort to train Ukrainian pilots